Hello to everyone, my name is Gregor and welcome to our new update Surfing the Elliott Waves, where I'll look at some of the most interesting developments for this week. This video has been brought to you by Orbex. I will look at Eurodollar, cable, Kiwi gold, also S&P 500 and crude oil. Now, before we go to some other markets, really want to bring your attention to these stock indexes. So here we are looking at S&P 500 at the bottom, and at the top we have DAX. And notice that so far both indexes are moving into some very important key levels. So here we have the 15,000 level for DAX futures and 4,200 potential support for the S&P 500. Also, you can see that on both prices at the lower side of this downward channel. So for a bullish case, you definitely want to see that this lower trend line will hold and that market will actually turn back to the upside from that area. But as you know, we cannot or we should not be too fast when trying to predict the next direction. We really want to see this level firstly to hold, and then maybe, let's say, by the end of the week, if we see a quite nice bounce, especially on Friday, and then we see prices with a positive close, then we think that could start looking again higher. Maybe just for a temporary recovery, but definitely I would not be surprised if we are going to see some support. So in the next few days, the next 2 days, this decision will most likely be made. If on the other side we will see a break, decisive break below that swing support, and then finish the week at the lows, then I'm afraid that we will see much more weakness. But what I really like so far is that on both we are seeing some gaps here that goes all the way back to March of this year. So it looks like this is very attractive potential support for the next bounce. Now let's take a look on the euro dollar. Now euro dollar is coming to the downside. It can be a very sharp correction back towards these January levels. So we could be seeing some price stabilization here. But looking at the 4-hour time frame, I'm not really sure if we are already at the end of this potential ABC drop. Keep in mind that wave C is a motive wave and that euro, by the way, is very weak. Economic activity is much worse compared to the US. So that's maybe why the US dollar is gaining higher, because as you know, even in the US, they want to slow down the economic activity. So there is speculation that Fed should stay and will remain hawkish with higher rates for longer period. Okay, so that's why the US dollar is currently trading to the upside. But looking at the substructure, as I said, this appears to be like an ongoing weakness within wave C. So some support here was found, but I think that more weakness can be seen after this wave 4 rally. So strong resistance would be somewhere here around these two trend lines of this downward channel. Okay, so 105.80 to 106.30, that's definitely a very important resistance area. Now let's take a look on cable. Now pound, as you know, is also very weak. It's been breaking down actually, especially since the Bank of England did not decide to lift the rates further. They surprised and stay on hold. So actually pound accelerated since then here, especially when breaking this channel support line. So I think that this is an ongoing impulsive weakness, and we should be prepared on more weakness after the current wave 4 rally, which I think could show up towards higher prices. And that broken resistance, sorry, trend line can now become very nice resistance here at the former wave 4, which is at 122.70. So around there is the next potential zone for the further sell-off. Now let's take a look on Kiwi. Now even Kiwi is turning back to the downside after this complex but still corrective rise. Notice that there was some very nice end of the month flows in September, but looks like that was just a temporary failure here at this swing resistance. Look at this drop. It's much sharper compared to the previous lag here, when we first thought that market maybe will change its direction. But since this drop is now very sharp, and also looks like the price is breaking this corrective channel, I just think that new lows firstly here have to be retested before we may finally see a stabilization here on this pair. Now let's take a look on gold. Gold is coming nicely to the downside. We've been talking about this a lot and calling a break from this triangle, and looks like that wave C is now in a very nice strong movement to the downside, but we are approaching this 1800 area. It's a strong support when it goes back to this former wave 4, which typically represents the important support after the corrective retracement. So that's the beautiful Elliott wave 8 wave pattern from where I would be expecting a bounce. Now the 61.8% is definitely something that we should also consider. However, for confirmed bottom here or changing trend from bearish to bullish mode, what we would need to see is obviously a 5-wave recovery. If that would happen, we would have low in place and much more upside afterwards would be expected. Now let's take a look on the S&P 500 as well. Now there was some fear recently, as you know, also wicks has came to the upside, but looking at the technical picture here, I still think that as long as we are trading above this 4170 level, this can still be only a counter trend movement. Okay, it can be wave 4. Today or tomorrow we may see some interesting decision regarding the further direction here. If 4170 is going to be overlapped, then I'm afraid that more weakness will be seen or higher degree range will be in place for the stock market. If by the end of the week we will see a recovery, okay, we see a bounce maybe from that current projected support where wave C may try to complete this counter trend movement. So if we will rally in 5 waves, okay, then I think that bottom will form, and then I would be looking higher for a minimum 3 wave, higher degree 3 wave recovery. So keep an eye on the price action in the next few days. I think that we could have some very interesting developments, even if this whole cycle will remain bearish here on the S&P 500, away down from these summer highs. I still think that this 5-wave drop should be at some point retraced by at least 3-wave movement. So it really depends how far, how big will be the next bounce, but I think that market could stabilize here by the end of the week. Now looking at also crude oil, as you know, crude oil has recently seen some very nice and strong recovery, and because of higher crude oil, of course, inflation again is coming back to the upside. So that's why there was a strong correlation with the US dollar. So crude oil and the US dollar both traded to the upside in the same manner, okay, because speculators believe that yields should stay higher for longer, so that Fed can successfully fight the inflation. But what we are seeing right now is that crude is actually making a very interesting reversal. So lower crude oil prices could actually mean that inflation will now stop and will not continue even higher. So at least for a temporary period of time, this could have some bearish pressure on the US dollar as well. So I'm thinking about more potential weakness here, especially when looking at this chart from an Elliott wave perspective. We might have completed this extended wave 3 here. So broken trend line also suggests that we completed 5 subwaves within wave 5 of this wave 3. So to be more clear here, what we are expecting is a corrective drop. Corrections here in wave 4 will typically be made by 3 waves. So I'm looking for a simple correction here for a 3-wave movement, possibly even back towards $83, $84 per barrel, where you have the 38.2%. Now, why I'm looking for a simple zigzag and not something more complex is because here we had very complex wave 2. Okay, so if we consider the rule of alternation where one correction of the same degree can be complex, then the other one can be much more simple. So I'm looking this to be a 3-wave drop all the way back to this starting point of that previous wave 4. So this could be very nice potential next support. Traders, thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Talk to you soon.